two people here that are still trying to make up their mind. I want you to know, if you've had a chance to see Hillary Clinton over the last few days here in New Hampshire, you have seen a woman put forth a full, complete case of why she should be the next president of the United States. As a young guy who also, like her, went to the same law school, her life of service didn't just begin last week, last year, last decade. Since she was a young person, like many of the young people here, she was dedicated to the idea that you can't hope your country can get better. I am proud that the first thing she did after law school was begin to fight for criminal justice reform and join the Children's Defense Fund. That when she went on to be the First Lady of Arkansas, instead of doing things that might have been popular, she went right to work to make sure that the Arkansas public school system began to rise in the ranks so those children had their shot at the American dream. I am proud that under attack, that she stood up as First Lady of the United States and put forth a dream that others said was impossible, that this should be a nation where every single person has a right to health care. When she became a senator, I am proud, as a guy who stood in New Jersey after that horrible, horrible day on September 11th, when our country was wounded in the heart, that she stood there on ground zero, joining hands with all people, Republicans and Democrats, blacks, whites, Jewish, Christians, Muslims, and said, right here on ground zero, we will rebuild, we will rebuild, we will rebuild. I am proud. That when she was Secretary of State, she didn't just go to places of comfort and convenience where everything was going right. She went to war-torn countries. She went to places where there's famine and distress. And she went not just to wave the American flags, but to roll up her sleeves and help, because we live on one planet and every human being has worth and dignity. She saw that, she fought for it, and she advanced American interests through service. That's the kind of Secretary of State she was. And so at a point in American history where we have not seen a person as qualified as her for the White House since George Washington. Let me tell you something. It is not surprising that a whole bunch of people, not just other folks out there in the Democratic primary, but a whole bunch of people are trying to attack her, sling mud at her, sling hate at her. I love this thing said by Teddy Roosevelt. You all know it's not the critic who counts. Not the strong man who points out how the other man stumbles or how the doer of deed could have done better. It's the man who's actually in the arena, his face marred with dust, sweat, and blood, who dares great things. Now, I don't know if Teddy Roosevelt understood, and I don't mean to criticize a former president of the United States, but when he said the credit belongs to the man in the arena, he really sort of said the credit belongs to the woman in the arena. When people tried to put her down, she stood up. When people tried to tell her to wait her turn, she went to the front of the line. There is a poet, a great American poet, that when her husband was being sworn in, he asked her, great native person from Arkansas, who sent a poem on that day, but when recently, I tell you, as I'm watching this Republican field, I have to confess, this Republican field has driven me to my knees for two reasons. One, because I'm just praying for them. They need some prayer. But two, because I'm praying for us. That poet, I mentioned them, and this is really, before I pass the microphone over, this is really the point what I want to make, is I've been turning to her poetry in my morning meditations, and she has this poem, and I know you all know the poem. It goes something like this: you may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still like dust I rise. You may shoot me with your words. You may cut me with your eyes. You may wound me with your hatefulness, but still like air I rise. This is the story. If you think about this for a second, this is the story of Hillary Clinton. But it's also our story. If you think about our story, I don't care if you are Latino, if you're Asian, if you're white, if you're Jewish, Christian, Muslim, or atheist, I don't care what your background is. If you share our heritage, that poem speaks of our story. It speaks of George Washington being beaten by the British in the first battles in New York, retreating through New Jersey as Americans didn't give up, they didn't give in, they joined his army, and it was a cold December day in 1776 that he came back, routing the British in Trenton and saying to America, we will rise. It was, if you think about it, a Harriet Tubman born in chains who broke those chains, joined with white Americans and black Americans, and built a railroad not out of steel but out of spirit. She looked to the North Star and said to this country, we will rise. It's those immigrants coming from Italy and Ireland and all across the globe, coming into the New York harbor, seeing the Statue of Liberty with her hand held high, saying to each other, in America, we will rise. It's Martin Luther King. It's Martin Luther King pointing to the mountaintop. It is Kennedy pointing to the moon, saying we in America will rise. And when we've been attacked, whether it was Pearl Harbor or 9/11 or even the bomb in Oklahoma or a church last year in Charleston where people were killed, we were in grief, we were wounded, we lost our own, but we did not give up. We joined together hand to hand and said, we will rise. And now I'm telling you right now, I stand here today all the way from New Jersey to support Hillary Clinton because she now has the message. Join me, America, because we will rise. People are broken criminal justice system, the minds of the mentally ill and the addicted. We're going to fix this, America. Join with me because we will rise. I tell you right now, it will not come as a surprise when I look in this woman's eyes from the hills of California to Washington, D.C. with the Washington Monument. Together with Hillary Clinton, we will rise! So now I have the privilege to introduce to you another woman who has risen through the ranks, who's applied her spirit, her guts, and her intellect to show this country that it doesn't matter what your background, race, or religion, and it definitely doesn't matter whether you're a man or a woman, when it comes to the highest heights of government, you can rise.